So, Ricardo, what did you think?
I liked his introduction. It was very clear. He had a good attitude, and the transitions were clear. The visual aids actually worked, and he showed a little bit of passion for the speech.
All right. Well, the topic is nicely identified. Your thesis statement comes 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the speech, so it takes a long time to get there, and it ends up coming after you give kind of a personal justification, then you get your video clip, and then you finally say, well, here's what I'm going to try and accomplish. So I think it could probably come before some of that material. Maybe use your video clip as your attention device. Tell us the thesis statement, then tell us your personal perspective and why you're talking about that. It would maybe flow together a little more smoothly. You've got a lot of information in the speech, but not a lot of citation. I assume that a lot of this information is available on In-N-Out's website, but I never heard that site being indicated in the presentation. Maybe there are other sources that you consulted, interviews or something, especially since you're an employee. But again, I don't know because you don't tell us, and so that's something that you want to be more consistent on. As I'm listening to the speech, it's organized chronologically, as you can tell by the different presidents that you talk about. That ends up being the way the material is being structured, but you didn't tell us that's the way it was going to be developed. And to be honest, it's a little depressing listening to the transitions every time because somebody has to die. You know, and I think instead of emphasizing the death and maybe some of the gruesome details on the death you just mentioned, you know, that they died, you know, in a plane accident, and the brother took over in that particular situation, and then when he unfortunately died, the mom, who is one of the original owners, had to take over, and she managed to change it, and focus more on the changes that were taking place during each of those epics and talk about what's different about it. A couple of things that I think that you left out. You mentioned the secret menu, for instance. I thought that was interesting, but you don't really give us much detail beyond the animal fries and the protein style. And Neapolitan shake is pretty bitchin'. You know, and how that developed, you know, how that came about. How did people manage to either figure that out or ask for it? Is it something that the company planned? Is it something that customers demanded and the company just responded to that sort of thing? Is it, how does word spread about those kinds of things? I thought that's something that would be a little bit more interesting. There's interesting stuff in the speech. You've got little bits and pieces of data, like about the palm trees and why they're there and the way it relates to that. But sometimes it just seems like they're random sorts of business between a lot of stuff that is kind of dry, and you need to edit a lot. Your speech is 10.5 minutes. So you go 2.5 minutes over, so you needed to do some editing. It needed to be tightened up. The visuals are okay. None of them explain much, but they all remind us of what the topic is. They give us some way of seeing the people that you're talking about. I thought the Chutters comparison at the end was pretty good because we can see the menu and how familiar it is. Although you didn't give us a comparative In-N-Out menu, I think everybody probably knows what it looks like. So as soon as you see that Chutters menu, you say, oh yeah, I can see why that would seem like it's being mimicked. It would be nice to know a little bit more about how the lawsuit ended up being resolved and why the company went out. I'm still under the impression, and I could be wrong, you know, since there is the new owner or the new CEO that's involved there, that it's still family owned, that they do not franchise, you know, that it's they're all company stores. They're not individually owned and operated by franchisees. And then you give us the Chutters site at the end, which exactly has the opposite on it, franchise opportunities. And you know, maybe that's one of the things that's different. You talked about the stores, they have more control because they're just a mile apart. How about they got more control because every store basically is owned by the same company and they all get their supplies the same way, they follow the same directions, that sort of thing. I think you needed to get maybe a little bit more into that. A lot of information, need to be tightened, much like my comments needed to be tightened. Sorry.